Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everyone, good morning. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. This is Worldwide Epidemic of Child Abuse and Human Rights Abuses. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And I'm glad to be able to do these shows. You know, I appreciate everybody who's tuning in and appreciate everybody who's been following my shows for a couple of years. I mean, that's a lot of shows. And, you know, I just wanted to do a show this morning. This was just kind of sitting heavy on my heart. And, you know, the whole issue, you know, I talk a whole lot about child abuse and child abuse issues during the week. And then, you know, on Saturdays I just like to bring out information that I find is very important regarding the issues around the world, women's rights and really all human rights, right? And there is so much information out there. I mean, it's hard to digest it all. You know, I have stuff coming into my inbox all the time from IRIN, and other places, Madre, and different things. And Madre, you know, they're an awesome organization, and they're doing a lot of great work. And I really like Madre because they're fighting, you know, for women's rights, you know, and to save women's lives. And I think, you know, in so many places around the world, women just don't have the same rights that we do, and obviously in North America. And we have to stand up for those rights here even, you know what I mean? Like, otherwise they'll just disappear. But, you know, all human rights have to be stood up for, even men's rights. But I don't think people really realize that. But standing up for Afghan women, this is an article from Madre, M-A-D-R-E, and www.madre.org. And this is an old article from last year, but it doesn't really matter because what's going on over there is just about the same old thing that's been going on over there for years. And, you know, this stuff really sits heavy in my heart because I know that these people have no help, you know. There's just a few organizations over there, you know, working to try to save people's lives, mainly women and children, mostly women. Children actually have more rights than women do, at least male children do. But, you know, it's horrific what's going on over there. And people, you know, there's so many arguments, you know, like, well, you know, it's their country, they need to figure out their own problems. I've heard all the arguments. I study all things Afghanistan. And so, you know, like even their languages. So like I understand, you know, what people are thinking and what society's thinking and what the world's thinking about the situation in Afghanistan. And what I do is I put myself in their shoes. So I don't, you know, instead of listening to all the critical voices out here around the world saying, why should we bother? I put myself in these women's shoes over here who are going to be beaten, raped, and tortured, and they're going to die. You know what I mean? They're going to have their noses cut off, their ears cut off. They're going to be you know, just sexually violated, and, you know, nobody's going to care. And, you know, the world stands by and says, well, just let them solve their own problems, you know. It's just their own deal. And it's like, you know, okay, put yourself in that person's shoes. You know, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But sometimes, in the back of my mind, I really do. Right? For all these people out here who speak, who have these ignorant comments and say things like, well, it's not my problem, they should fix their own problems. Who cares if these women are suffering, you know? What I feel like doing is saying, okay, I wish you could trade places with them, and I wish you could have your nose cut off and your ears cut off, and I wish you could be sexually violated and raped and beaten and starved and stoned. Yeah, I really do. I wish we could do an eye for an eye, and I wish that, you know, people who would speak out and say such rude and ignorant comments would just shut their mouth. Because, you know, I can put myself in these people's shoes because I grew up abused. I can put myself in these women's shoes because my mother grew up abused and then was abused in a domestic violence situation. And so, you know, it's just absolutely ridiculous that the world sits there and just, you know, says that it shouldn't matter and that it doesn't matter and that, you know, people's lives don't count. Because they do. Because, see, if we say that people's lives don't count, that means your life doesn't count, and I can just dismiss you away. How about that? You know, if we're going to say that somebody's life doesn't count, I'll just dismiss you. You don't count. How about putting yourself in somebody's shoes who doesn't count, right? This sits at the very, you know, human core of what is evil in this world and what is ridiculous and what is completely unacceptable. And we have to make these changes. You know, we have to change this. This is going to take a whole lot of generations. But what it is going to take education, you know. And education really is the key to everything, right? But a lot of people don't believe that. And they think that, oh, it'll never change. That's why we need education, to shut those people up. Because it will change. But the thing is the more hecklers and the more people out here we have that don't care about human lives, and don't, you know, they really don't. There's a whole lot of people out here that just don't care, you know, that people around the world are being killed and murdered, and, you know, whether it's a man, a woman, or a child, doesn't matter. It's all incredibly wrong. I know that, If I was one of these women laying on the ground over there with my nose cut off and, my ears cut off and having been stoned and beaten, and I would want somebody to help me, and I'd be like wondering why the world is letting this happen. You know what I mean? And why, and wondering why my own country was letting this happen. Of course they do. I know because I study all things Afghanistan, and I actually know people who work over there. And the issues is, of course, they want their own country to help them out, obviously, but they know that they're not going to because it's all based on lack of education, ignorance, right? And so that's why I'm saying for all these ignorant people out here, who make these ridiculous comments like, oh, well, it doesn't matter if those people are dying, it doesn't affect me, that those people would just, it's too bad that we couldn't just say the same thing about you, that you don't count, doesn't matter if you die, too bad. See you suffering on the side of the road somewhere, who's going to help you? Hopefully nobody. Honestly, that's how I feel, because I'm so sick and tired of people not being human and not caring and not being compassionate and just being these monsters who just think that it's okay to do this stuff to people. And most of it's because they have not had it done to them, and that's the truth. Most people who say that it's okay to abuse children or abuse people have not been abused, and that's why they think it's okay. There's a whole lot of people that don't know what it's like to be beaten or to be raped or to be burned or stabbed or anything like that. There's a whole lot of people that don't know what that's like. And so they can't put themselves in that person's shoes. They had maybe they didn't have the greatest life, but they certainly were treated with respect and decency. And so they don't understand what it would be like to be one of these little children out here who are starving, begging on the street, who are going to die around the world. They don't understand what it would be like to be a woman having your nose cut off and your ears cut off. Try that one on for size. Just people just are unable to be empathetic and compassionate, and that's because they're twisted. There's something wrong with their minds and their brains. Like, people who can't be empathetic and compassionate are really twisted people, and there's something psychologically wrong with them, and all you have to do is study a little psychology and you can find that out. But there's a whole lot of people like that. They really don't care. And so the ones that do care, they're already doing something. You know what I mean? Like these people that work with Madre and all these other groups, these international organizations who are out here trying to help people make a difference, they hear it all too. They hear all this, why should we bother? What does it really matter? It's not affecting us. And, it's their problem or whatever. It's just like abused children here in North America. Everybody's saying, well, it's their problem. It's not mine. It's somebody else's problem, somebody else's child. In the meantime, who's going to help that child? Nobody, right? And this is the sad part is this is injustices. This is injustices. And see, people don't like to hear from people like me because I'm the social conscience of the world, right? People like myself that stand up, we're the social conscience of the world. And we make people feel bad. That's what we do. But we're not trying to make people feel guilty. Like, I don't believe in guilting people into anything. What I'm trying to do is open people's eyes to the reality of what it's like to have your face bashed in, or what it's like to be sexually assaulted, what it's like to be raped, what it's like to be a child who's being abused. Just the conscience of the world, saying, look at these people, look at these people that are suffering, look at these people. So we can't help them. That's true. That's so true. They're going to die. You know what I mean? But let's change this, right? And the only way we can change it is to pull our heads out of our asses and stop, just assuming that somebody else is going to do the job. Somebody else is going to donate the $5. Somebody else is going to join that organization and volunteer. Somebody else is going to speak out against human rights in our own country. No, that's just ridiculous to leave it up. That's what I finally got off the couch 4.5 years ago, and I said, man, I can no longer sit on the couch. I can't sit on the sidelines any longer. And I don't know what happened. Like, I just saw this thing on TV, and it just bothered me. I had seen violence my whole life. I had tasted violence my whole life and lived it. Lived suffering and misery. I've lived it. But the thing is I saw something on TV that just spurred me, and I said, my God, like why am I sitting here on the sidelines, just, not happy because I know what these people are suffering. I know what they're going through. Why am I sitting here thinking it's great that other people are doing the work and I'm not helping out? I'm not doing anything. I'm just like taking up space here on the planet. And, and that's what a lot of people are doing. But the thing is that not everybody feels compelled to help, Not everybody feels compelled to help. The only thing I can say for those people that don't feel compelled to help is the next time, you have a car accident and people drive on by and just leave you there, and then you end up having to lose your legs because nobody got you any help, and then you're crying out the blues. Well, why aren't people helping? Put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Or let's say you're walking down the road, one day and somebody sexually assaults you, grabs you, throws you behind the bushes, whether you're a man or a woman, and sexually assaults you, and, you're raped, you're beaten, you're left there, and nobody helps you. Put yourself in somebody else's shoes, Put yourself in an abused child's shoes, being beaten and tortured and burned and possibly sexually used, and there's no help for them. That put yourself in those children's shoes for just a few minutes, right? Because this is absolutely unacceptable, and we all need care, right? And a lot of people don't care, but that's the whole issue, and I feel bad for them because I don't like to wish bad things on people because I think that what you do comes back around to you. But what I like to be is a conscience for people like to say, hello, wake up and smell the coffee. This stuff is happening whether we want to see it or not. This stuff is happening whether we want to be a part of the change or not. And just be very, very thankful that it's not happening to you. Right, that's the whole issue. So this particular article here from Madre just gives people a really good idea about women, the issues women face in Afghanistan. And I talk a lot about this because I'm a volunteer with the Canadian Women for Women Afghanistan, and I'm also I'm not very active anymore, but I was last year and the year before. And I also volunteer with the Canadian International Learning Foundation, the CANILF, Canadian International Learning Foundation, and they work in Afghanistan as well. And just awesome organizations, right? Some in Canada, some in the United States. There's people doing some great work, to try to help these people, and it is working, and they are making progress. It's just slow because it's hard to get people on the bandwagon, and it's understandable. We have our own issues in this country. We have our own issues in North America. That's why most of my work is speaking out about what's going on here in North America. But I also forget these people over here. Because these are people, these are human beings. They're mothers, they're daughters, they're sisters, they're brothers, they're somebody's child, they're somebody's grandmother, And they feel the same things we do. When they feel pain the same that we do. You know what I mean? I think people like to dehumanize people, and that's what's been happening in Afghanistan for so long, that even the rest of the Western world and the rest of the world, period, thinks that these people are not human. And that they don't have feelings, and that they don't feel pain, and they don't feel agony. They've just dehumanized the whole country of Afghanistan, which is just ridiculous. And you know why they do it? So they don't have to care about it, What we don't have to feel empathy toward, we don't have to care about, right? My parents didn't have any empathy towards their children. That's why they beat the shit out of us, tortured us, and allowed us to continue on and suffer our whole entire lives because they had no empathy. They could not see us as human beings. We were not human beings to them. We were just something that they hated and that they could just use, manipulate, and twist and physically abuse and hurt. Because it was real easy. It's easy to hurt somebody or forget about somebody if you don't think they're human. It's real easy to just dehumanize a whole population. That's what's been happening for years. That's what will always continue to happen. And, we have to really stop that way of thinking. Because we're all human beings and we all have our obligation to each other. Believe it or not, I don't care whether anybody believes that or not, that's the way it is. We do. And we have an obligation to try to help each other. And hey, if we can't just give away all of our stuff and say, okay, here, take everything I have, because then somebody's going to have to come along and help us. Right? And that doesn't work. Right? That theory never worked in the first place. The whole idea is just kind of pay attention, and when you see human rights being violated, you need to speak up. So, and also promote education in every way. Education is really the key. People think it's not, but it certainly is, because it does change things. Gets people moving in a positive direction of some sort. So it's very important. But, these issues that are facing Afghan women, I put myself in their shoes because it's easy enough for me to do that. I'm a woman, right? And also because, I grew up abused and hated my body. I was sexually abused as well as physically abused. And I hated myself. I hated my body, for a long, long time. And so I understand what these women are going through over here, except for not on the same level that they are, because they can't even walk down the street. They can't even walk down the street without worrying whether they're going to be killed or, murdered. They can't go to school without worrying about whether they're going to be killed, or stoned or raped and assaulted, or, and they have no rights, period. They have no rights within their home. I mean, I grew up in an abusive home, so obviously I didn't have any rights either. So I understand that portion of it. See, I can kind of put myself in their shoes, right? And they want to kill themselves too, and I did too, for so many years. So did my mother. My mother was abused as a child, and she was also in an abusive marriage, where she was being abused. She didn't have any rights, and so she made sure that we didn't have any rights, and so she abused us, right? And so my dad did the same thing as well. So both my parents were my abusers, but my mother was also being abused by my dad. And so I understand this stuff on a complete level, you know what I mean? And the issue is my mom wanted to kill herself too, right? That's what happened to people when they're just so wounded. They're so degraded. They're so misused, mistreated that they just want to end their life. They can't see any other way out. They can't see any other way of going forward another day. And so many people are in this situation, and so many people make fun of people like this. And that's why, in my heart, I really try not to wish that they could experience one day of hell in my life, or in somebody else's life, like some of these women here who are having their noses cut off and their ears cut off and being stoned to death. I try not to wish bad things on people, but man, part of me really wishes that these ignorant people out here who think this is okay would have to experience it, because that's kind of like tough beings. That's karma to you, And we all need to be paying attention to what we're doing, and we need to pay attention to what's going on around the world, because otherwise we'll lose our human rights here too. But you better believe it. This is exactly what this is about, and we have to stand up for it, human rights. Otherwise we'll lose them, right? So this particular article talks about these women's situation here in Afghanistan, and it's really talking about the Afghan Women's Survival Fund, right? But the stories really are just probably very typical of what women go through over there. I was reading a book. It was just such an awesome book, and the faces of the women's voices, or man, I wish I could find it. I have to go back and try to find this book. But anyway, it was a compilation of all these women's stories, and a lot of them were from Afghanistan. Some were from Guatemala, some were from Iraq. Some were from Iran, different places like that, where these women had been, speaking out against rights abuses, standing up for women's rights, and most of them had been martyred. They'd lost their lives for it. They were shot down or killed or whatever. And it's just typical their life. The minute they stand up for themselves, they're just killed. Right? They don't even have to stand up for themselves to be killed. But the minute that they do stand up for themselves, they are killed, or they're sent to prison. Right? And so I just want to read out a couple of the stories on here, and this is from www.madre.org. I hope you will go check their website out. They have great information. This is Shabana's story, and this is from May 2009, posted on Madre's site. And it says a 17-year-old girl named Shabana turned up at a Women for Afghan Women's shelter in Kabul, which is supported by Madre's Afghan Women's Survival Fund. She had narrowly escaped being killed by her husband. Shabana's father died when she was young, leaving her vulnerable to abuse. And 2 years ago, she was walking home from school when she was kidnapped by a young man from her village. He beat her and forced her into marriage. He kept her a prisoner and abused her repeatedly for the next 7 months. And one night he choked her until she blacked out and almost died, and she fled the next day. She says her family, including her mother and uncle, did nothing to intervene. To them, the kidnapping was just a settlement for a long-standing property dispute. The property was Shabana's sister-in-law, who had escaped from an abusive arranged marriage to the kidnapper's cousin over 20 years ago. So when Shabana first arrived at the Madre-supported safe shelter, she had nothing, no job, no access to school, no money, no family support. Despite this, she was a strong and determined young woman. With the help of attorneys supported by the Afghan Women's Survival Fund, she confronted her kidnapper in court and demanded a formal divorce. Talking to reporters after the court hearing just 26 days after her escape, Shabana said her head was ached from the beatings. "I am not a toy, I am a human," she said in a clear, strong voice. "I should not be treated like an animal." And her mother and uncle attended the hearing to urge her to return to her kidnapper so that the stain on her family's honor could be removed. She will always be on guard, fearing that her former husband and his family will retaliate. "I would rather die than go back," said Shabana. "If I go back, he will kill me, I am sure of that." Shabana found a job as a caregiver at the Afghan Women's Children's Support Center, where she earns enough money to live with dignity. She's taking accelerated classes to finish high school, studying English, computer science to improve her job prospects when she graduates. And the women at Women for Afghan Women have become her supportive new family. And Shabana dreams of becoming a lawyer so she can help other Afghan women who face violence. And that's what a lot of those women will do. They go to school. They get the ones that actually can get into the schools, because there's very few schools there. There's like a couple around the whole country of Afghanistan. There's one in Kabul, or maybe there's two in Kabul. There's one in Kandahar, and then there's one. I guess there's one in another little place, Herat, I think. But Wahida's story, this is at 13. Wahida was sold into marriage to a 45-year-old man. He beat her he beat her and sold their 2-month-old son to a family in Pakistan. And after 16 years, she was accused of infidelity. Even with no evidence, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and her 3 children went to prison with her. Eventually, Wahida received a pardon with the help of the Ministry of Women's Affairs and is now living with her children at a safe shelter. Madre and our sister organization, Women for Afghan Women, WAW, have opened the first home for children of incarcerated women, where they can be cared for and educated. Because these babies, these children, mainly the girls, will end up going with the women to the prison, right? And people would say, well, I guess that's all right because at least they're with their mother. But the thing is then there's this suffering, and they're not going to get an education. They're not going to even get proper food probably. And proper hygiene, nothing, right? Pretty harsh, pretty scary. Zarbobo's story. Zarbobo lived in a village outside of Kabul, and for over 14 years she was beaten and tortured by her husband. She had 4 children. One he threw into a fire pit, and another he left to die from an illness. And then he killed his brother and married his sister-in-law. After that, Zarbobo was locked up in a tiny room with a piece of bread to eat each day. She escaped barefoot and half naked and found her way to our safe shelter. Our Afghan sisters at WAW, W-A-W, are doing all they can to keep Zarbobo safe, rescuing her 2 remaining children, bringing her husband to justice. At the shelter, Zarbobo wept because for the first time in her life she had enough to eat. This is horrific. She was married off she was just probably really young, right? So for over 14 years she was beaten and tortured by her husband. And, put yourself in her shoes. My God, this is horrific. Bibi's story. When Bibi was 12, she was forced to marry a local Talib, and Bibi was treated like a slave, regularly beaten, forced to sleep with animals. Bibi tried to escape at age 17, but was captured and brought back to her husband. Days later, in August 2009, Bibi's husband cut off most of her nose and both of her ears, while his brother held her down as punishment for running away. Left for dead, she dragged herself to her uncle's house, but he refused to help. And finally, she made it to her father, who took her to a hospital. After recuperating for several months, she found a safe haven at one of the Madre-supported safe shelters. And so it's just important to realize that this stuff is happening. These people are not animals. These people are women. These people are people, human beings, right? And they do not deserve to be treated like this. People say, well, it's their own people's fault. Look what they're doing to their own people. You're so right about that. Even they know that. They're not stupid. Right? The whole issue is that we can't. Why are we going to allow this? It's the same issue with allowing these mass rapes and mass civilian killings in Africa. It's the same thing. See, I'm not just all about Afghanistan. You know what I mean? I'm all about human rights issues all around the world, right? So I see something it's all going on. It's going on all around the world, And people think that North America is, especially not including Mexico, but Canada and the United States. They think that they're excluded and that there's no such thing as human rights abuses, and that's just not true. There's human rights abuses everywhere, right? And I just don't mind speaking out against it, right? I have nothing better to do, and I figure, hey, the more noise I can make, the more books I can write, the more speaking I can do. I'm just one more person to be a conscience for the public, for the world, to say, look, don't forget about these people. You know what I mean? And don't forget about the people that are doing the work to help them, because they need all the help they can get. These people that are out here providing these safe shelters for these women, their lives would be at risk. I hope everybody knows that. Their lives will be at risk for helping these women. That's why their own family won't do it, because their own families won't even help their own people because their lives are at risk and they don't want to die. So they're like, well, can't help you. Sorry, off you go. So, strangers do it, right? Strangers put their lives on the line for people every day around the world. Like here in North America, strangers don't necessarily have to do that, but strangers don't really do much to help each other either around North America. It's kind of like, well, you're on the street, too bloody bad, sorry. No, there's just a whole lot of problems with the way people feel about people. And that's what I'm here to do, is to change and to be part of the change. For people to wake up and smell the coffee and start treating people with dignity and respect, even in your own life. Stop abusing your own partner. Stop abusing your husband. Stop abusing your wife. Stop abusing your children. Stop abusing your coworkers. Stop bullying people. Stop bullying your coworkers. Stop bullying the people that work around you. That happens all the time. There's all kinds of people out here who fight against violence who are bullies. There's all kinds of people out here who fight against child abuse who are bullies. See, people don't want to take a look at themselves. They just want to look at everybody else and say, well, that's their problem. But they don't look at themselves and say, oh, I'm an ignorant son of a gun. Look what I do. You know why? Because then that means they would have to change it. And people don't want to do that. They like to be bullies. They like to hurt people, and it makes them feel good, right? Well, I got news for you. I hope that karma comes and kicks you in the ass. That's what I hope. And honestly, I really do, because I think that that's only fair and only right. But we got to be a voice for these people out here. So whatever you do, don't forget about these people, and don't forget about these organizations that are helping people, like CHF, the Canadian Hunger Foundation. I volunteer with them too. I'm not very active right now. Canadian Women for Women Afghanistan, they do a lot of great work, and right now they're putting together, they've got libraries over there, and they've got some really cool stuff going on. And Afghan citizens are now getting a hold of the information that was their history that was lost for so many years. They didn't even know that they were free, that they were more Western than anything else, and that they were a decent people for a long time until things changed for the worse. But the thing is, their history was wiped out, so they didn't even know their own history. So now they got books, and they can read about their own history. They can find out about who they were, so they can get back to that. Because there's many people that actually know, because they're educated. They know the history of Afghanistan. They know that they were a free people and that they had a great life, that their country was a good country until people started to try to take it over. Right? It's always been an area that people want to take over because of where it sits logistically. And so, get educated. Just start reading and start figuring this stuff out. Because, this could happen in our country. This could happen in your country. This is probably happening in just about every other country except for, the UK and the United States and Canada and Australia, right? Some of the countries that have it together. But there's so many other countries that don't. We need to help those people. They're people just like you and me. Right? So don't forget about these people out here. When you have a chance to make a difference, you have a chance to get involved, just do it, right? And don't forget, because these little children are suffering, these women are suffering, and there's men out there suffering human rights abuses, right? And this is all incredibly wrong. And I support the government, and I support the UN, and I support all lawmakers and federal stuff. And you bet I am all pro-law. I'm all pro, and I'm pro-government. You know why? Because we can't govern ourselves. So too bloody bad. So there you go. Have to go with what the better answer is. So you know what? Don't mock these people. Get on board to figure out how we're going to change these systems instead of sitting around complaining about it. Because that's the issue. We got to figure out how to change this stuff. There's a whole lot of people that like to run down CPS. There's a whole lot of people that like to run down DHS, and they spend their whole time doing it instead of figuring out how we're going to change this, right? So if you have that kind of knowledge, start sharing it, right? There's a lot of people out there with a lot of knowledge who won't share it because they're knowledge mongers or whatever. They just keep all the knowledge to themselves. It's like don't be a knowledge monger. Share your knowledge, share your gifts, share your talents, share what information you have, because it does make a difference. Somebody will pick it up and somebody will take it just that much further. And that's how good systems are developed. That's how good stuff comes about. Right? So if you're a person out there who knows how to get things done, share it. Make sure that you do, right? Have a great day, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon. I'm on tomorrow. Lisa A. Freeman from Abuse Bites is going to be on the show tomorrow at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I hope you'll be there for that. That's going to be great. Check out their website at www.abusebites.com, I believe it is. Let me get that for you. But anyway, that's going to be a great show. And she's a founder and president of Abuse Bites, and she and her dog Snickers go around. They do public speaking tours. They'll go just about anywhere to public speak. They have school programs, training programs, all kinds of stuff to stop abuse, stop bullying, stop violence, stop poverty. And I love what they're doing. I think what they're doing is awesome. And so that's Abuse Bites. You can just type into your browser Abuse Bites. And Lisa A. Freeman, that's who's going to be on the show tomorrow night. And so I'll be on the show, and also as well. Next week, I won't be on Monday morning. I'll be on Tuesday morning, one child abuse survivor to another for an hour instead of half an hour. So I'm sort of switching my shows to Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays for one child abuse survivor to another, and just dropping a few shows and making the other shows an hour, just because I have so much going on. I just don't have time, and I'm getting tired. So yeah, but thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. It's probably like 812 shows in or something like that. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate you spending 2 years with me. Have a great weekend and be safe in everything that you do. Talk to you soon.